KPRC Channel 2. This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Oh my God. There's people laying on the ground.
Shots fired. Officer down. It's an assist officer.
It was near the end of a peaceful protest in Dallas when shots rang out, scattering thousands seeking cover. When it was over, 12 police officers were shot. 5 of them died in the deadliest day for U.S. law enforcement since the terrorist attacks of 9/11. The attacker was killed by a police robot detonating an explosive. The mayhem over was the start of the search for answers about why it happened and how something like this can be prevented from ever happening again. Here this morning to talk about the current climate nationally and in Houston, Houston Police Department Acting Chief Martha Montalvo and Doug Griffith, the Vice President of the Houston Police Officers Union. Thank you both for being here. Your thoughts about what has happened in Dallas and how it's impacted you?
When in time something happens in another city, in another country, because of social media and because of the instant communication that happens around the world, it does have an impact on our city. What happened in Dallas was horrific. It was something I think that shocked not only the law enforcement community, but I think people in general, communities in general. And it does impact us because it reinforces the need for us to ensure that our officers have the right training and that they're safe and that they're vigilant.
Doug, as a union VP, I know that the union has really said, okay, guys, we need to double up. You thought that was a necessary step to take?
Yes, sir, and I want to applaud the chief. She immediately came out and said that anyone that wanted to ride two-man should be allowed to do so. And our captains, some of our captains even mandated that their officers ride two-man for safety issues, and we greatly appreciate that.
Part of this is all because of a climate of distrust that's been going on between some people and police. Some of what started this, precipitated this march in Dallas, was in Baton Rouge, the first shooting that happened this past week. This was Alton Sterling. He was killed by police officers outside a store. Now, they had been responding to a 911 call of someone with a gun, and that's what they found. That was on Tuesday in Baton Rouge. Cell phone video captured the shooting death of another gentleman 1,200 miles to the north, 24 hours later, shot near the Minneapolis suburb of Falcon Heights, killed by an officer, and then the aftermath of that, he was shot 4 times. These shootings, cell phone video, these kinds of things happen with all the video around. It's kind of really elevated the angst, has it not? That now there's angst is there. Now, how do we get that down? How do we de-escalate the environment that we're in right now?
Well, what I'm expressing to the officers, whenever I go out to these assemblies, whenever I go out to these events, I always make it a point to talk to the officers, to shake their hands, to thank them for what they're doing. But I also tell them that this is an opportunity for us to engage. For the most part, we are very fortunate in this city because we do have the support of the community. And trust is two-way. Not only does the community need to trust us, but the police needs to also exemplify that we trust the community.
I noticed you had a news conference the other day and you had people from the community and they were praying for police. That was a very interesting moment that you were together and they were praying for you. Talk about the relationship you have with that community, because you said that is key to this community being able to do what it's doing. Correct.
And we have relationships with different segments of the community, including the faith community. We've always sat down, and for instance, I meet with them on a quarterly basis, different organizations, different individuals, because that relationship needs to exist before something does happen.
Now, Doug, I know you're an officer, 20 years. Sunnyside was your beat.
Yes, sir.
You love that, you said.
Yes, sir.
It's a community kind of thing for you, is it not?
Yes, sir, it is. There's so many good people out there that deserve proper police protection. As we know, that's an area that's riddled with gangs and drugs, and I'm proud to say that I went out there and I felt I tried to help the good citizens out there.
Do you or some of your officers feel targeted these days with all that's going on?
They do, but with that being said, they go out every day and act in a professional manner. A lot of people don't understand how many contacts police officers have in the city of Houston every year. Last year we had over 2 million contacts between citizens and law enforcement officials just in Houston. With that, we only had 217 citizen complaints. And it is now easier to complain on an officer than ever before. You can do it through social media, you can do it online, you can do it in person by letter. So when you go out there and you have this low a number, that tells me that we're doing something right.
You were going to say something, Andrew.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate what Doug is saying. There's always an inherent danger because of what we do. But what we try to relay to our officers is to not let that define you. You know, make sure that we engage people, make sure that we're seen, make sure we talk to people. That is just part of the reality of the world we live in today.
One of the realities, too, the Dallas shootings, it struck a chord with me. Dallas Police Chief David Brown, after he lost 5 officers, he said this. This is one of the things he said.
We are not going to let a coward who would ambush police officers change our democracy. We're not going to do it. We don't feel much support most days. Let's not make today most days. Please, we need your support.
That was so heartfelt. Did he speak for pretty much all police officers, or was that just something that's unique to Dallas for right now?
I think he was responding from the heart. You have to understand his officers, he lost 5 officers. Many others were wounded. So he probably was at the lowest point in his life at that particular time. Sometimes, you know, some days are better than others. Sometimes we do feel supported.
Yes.
And I even venture to say most times we feel supported. But it's about trust, and trust goes both ways. And I think the police department has to do a better job of forging these relationships and ensuring that we're talking to one another.
And now you have an issue in your own department. I don't know how big it's going to be, but Saturday one of your police officers shot and killed a person in the street who was shooting a gun, and surveillance video caught some of the shooting. And so I'm sure that's going to be talked about quite a bit. What is going on now in the early stages of that investigation? What can you tell me about that?
Well, there is video, and so it's still a very active investigation. But from what we understand, the gentleman was under the influence of some type of intoxicant, and he was armed. He was walking in the middle of the street, and at some point, as he gets to the intersection, he confronts the officers and shoots at least twice his pistol. Mm-hmm. The officers were not on the call for service. They happened to be driving up when this incident occurred.
At this point, early in the investigation, how long would this type of investigation take?
Well, I've asked them to expedite that, but it takes, because you're looking at getting toxicology back, witness statements. There's still some witnesses that they're looking for, and obviously reviewing all of the tapes that are out there.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in, Chief, and Doug, thank you for coming in. I want you to be back. We're going to do live stream after this on the TV. But as we go to break, I want to remind you viewers out there about the 5 officers who lost their lives on Thursday night. And they are Dallas Area Rapid Transit Officer Brent Thompson, Dallas Police Officers Michael Kroll, Patrick Zemaripa, Mike Smith, and Lauren Aarons. Welcome back to Houston Newsmakers, where I'm joined by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is in her 11th term serving the 18th Congressional District. Has it been that long?
Well, I enjoy serving people.
I guess you do. You've been at it for a while. It's been a tough week for a lot of people. What are your thoughts about what has happened this past week? I know on the House floor, you and the Congressional Black Caucus indicated you were going to be going back to the communities, trying to do what you could to institute some sense of calm. What's your sense about what's been happening?
Well, 2018 will be the 50th year of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Many of us remember that as a very young person and wondered whether this country would be able to stand under that pressure. The emotions were shrill and high. The hearts were broken all over this country. He was the King of Peace. And so taking lessons from that time, I frankly believe that even in these difficult times, that we have a pathway of unity and coming together and recognizing each other's human pain. First, let me say, my heart was broken as a senior member of the Homeland Security Committee, the ranking member over the Crime Committee for the Judiciary that deals with law enforcement every day. My heart was broken with the second largest killing of police in the nation's history. It will always be broken, and I'll always look to heal that amongst our law enforcement officers. Likewise, I have to address the pain in my community, but many others. When we saw the marchers in Washington, Gambrell, they were young white people, young Hispanics, young Asians, young African Americans protesting about the loss of life of these individuals. Those cases are under investigation. That's one thing that we need to say to the American people. Unlike other countries, we investigate. We want it to be transparent. We want the story to be told and to give that investigation a chance to proceed. But even with doing that, we have to pointedly address this distrust and police-community relations. I'm willing to jump head-on into that. I believe community-oriented policing. I think I've just listened to our chief and the vice president of the Police Officers Union, and I see in them an understanding how people are important, and that is how you govern. That is how you assure a law-abiding nation that the people who are governed, who are under the laws, that they are important too.
You know, what happens is that a lot of people, they hear what you're saying, but they also see what's going on in Washington, D.C. There's not a lot, at least when you look at the big picture, there's not a lot of harmony going on in Washington, D.C. So in some ways, isn't what's going on in our communities a reflection of what's going on in the nation's capital with the parties that are just as far apart as they could ever be?
Well, let me say this, and I've always said this with a sense of humor, but I know that I have to be more in an explanatory manner because in the days of writing the Constitution, there were no smartphones. We didn't see the discord or the debate. And so what I would say to Americans is that what you see in Congress is the underpinnings of our democracy. When people can disagree vigorously with a great deal of emotion, but no violence occurs, no coup d'etat occurs, and we continue to debate. Yes, there is a very big disagreement. I would like to say that it is not a divide over the greatness of this nation. And I remember Robert F. Kennedy, who spoke during Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. He had to speak that night in Indianapolis. And he made the point that America has to decide, does it want to divide or does it want to unify around compassion and wisdom and love and against hatred? In the United States Congress, there's not hatred. There's a vigorous debate on the issue right now of guns and violence, and certainly I take the position that the Second Amendment is alive and well, but Justice Scalia agreed that it is alive and well, but it can be regulated. And frankly, tragically, this young man in Dallas had an AR-15 semi-automatic that officers tending to civilian needs did not have. I want to protect the cops, and I want to acknowledge that the Second Amendment is alive, but I also want to acknowledge the fact that terrorists shouldn't have those guns, and you need to close the loopholes, that criminals, that people who are domestic abusers, people who have mental illness concerns, which we see all over, or do not do that. This gentleman in South Carolina, St. Emmanuel, if he had been through that background check and there had been the law that said that he could not get the gun until the background check was finished, how much time would that have been? They would have determined his criminal background and he wouldn't have gotten the guns. Now, obviously, we know because loopholes exist that maybe he would have pursued it, but maybe not.
Is it too soon to have that conversation on the heels of what happened in Dallas, or is that something that's got to be going on the whole time?
Well, I think none of the discussions about violence in America diminishes the sadness of the loss of those 5 officers, and as well as I hear police. I feel very comfortable with law enforcement because I've heard them express their understanding of those incidences of Mr. Sterling and Mr. Castile. But as a nation of laws, I adhere to the investigation, but I feel a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with officers who can feel compassion and look for solutions. And I really do believe, though it sounds like an old-fashioned tactic, our former mayor, Lee P. Brown, brought community policing really to the overall police community. It works. And when you have a sense of protectiveness, the community protecting the police, we know Officer Jones or Garcia. The police protecting the community, there's an amazing reformational change in how we address each other. We've got your back. And you saw in Dallas, as Chief Brown made his feelings known, and I'm glad he made his feelings known. He's a human being. He lost his brothers in arms. His sisters in arms were wounded. Others were wounded. But what he said was, we want the support to last, and look at it now. And I don't think you're going to break that bond. People are expressing love and wisdom and the fact that they want to be unified.
Congresswoman, you know, I appreciate whenever you come in. We always need more time than we do. We're still going to keep you here, but I want to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about a little bit about the tactics that the houses that you're using in the House now to maybe pass some of those bills, and the local shooting that happened here over the weekend. What kind of suggestions you'd have about trying to make that have a better outcome? Right after this break.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Welcome back. We're talking with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Congresswoman, there's a shooting in your district yesterday, police shooting a man who was in the middle of the street. What do you know about that? You heard the chief talking about that earlier. What do you tell the community as this process is ongoing?
You know, I heard the comments of his wife, and her pain was distinctive and very clear. I just wanted to touch him one more time. So whenever someone loses their life, you have to offer sympathy and concern to that family and to that community. As I indicated, I've served on the Judiciary Committee for 20 years plus. I've been through Columbine, 9/11, and all of the mass shootings. So I know that violence is painful. But I also want to say to the community that we hear you, and I believe the Houston Police Department, as evidenced by the chief, hears you. I look forward to hearing a briefing and the progress of the investigation. And I look forward to the right thing being done. I don't want to speculate, but the video that I saw, the gentleman was in the middle of the street. And so there are many factors that you have to determine. I want officers to go home to their families, but I also want these issues dealing with the shooting of African-American men to be acknowledged, and Hispanic young men to be acknowledged, and the pain that those of us who are mothers and fathers of young black men, young Hispanic men. Last evening, a teenager, 18, I want to offer my sympathy to his family, not in my district, was shot down by a gun. He was driving to get some fast food. And he was shot down in the car. He's no longer here with us. My sympathy to his family. We've got to get our hands around violence, but the communities deserve answers. I'm going to be part of that. And then I'm going to use the leadership of an office of the member of the United States Congress that represents this nation, that says to America, says to Houston, says to the state of Texas, that I am not going to let us divide over hatred. I'm not going to let us divide over lack of understanding, and I'm not going to have us pitted against each other, that we're against law and order. I'm not going to have the young people that I saw in Washington. Gambrell, you have to know, I walked out to them of Black Lives Matter.
Are they relevant, by the way? Black Lives Matter?
They are relevant. Let me say this. I hate to use the term 50 years ago. I'd like to say to the audience I was just a babe. But the young people of Dr. King's era, he was 36. The young people of his era were maligned. John Lewis, the conscience of the Congress. What are these rebel rousers doing? Black Lives Matter, when I went out, I saw interns who are interning in the United States Congress, but I also saw a rainbow of colors of people. I saw white young people, Hispanic, Asian, African American, and they were peaceful, and they were not against the legal structure of this nation. They were only petitioning it to respond to their pain.
30 seconds left. You have an event tonight. Talk about that really quickly, about what you want to happen tonight at 5 o'clock.
It is an evidence of what I hope my spirit shows today, and that is, it is a unity march for peace, and to acknowledge that violence is not the way. What the perpetrator and shooter did in Dallas was a domestic terrorism against our officers. That is not the way. The way is to have us come. We have called the whole community, and we're starting at 500 Clay, Antioch Baptist Church. Let me thank Bishop James Dixon and the whole clergy community that I'm delighted to embrace and join, and to work through my office as well. And we're marching with the mayor on to City Hall, but it's not the mayor or Congresswoman Jackson Lee or the clergy. It is the people that we want to come to show the people and law enforcement that we're unified for what is right about Houston and about America.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Congresswoman Jackson Lee's going to stay past the half hour. We're going to do live stream, by the way, and I'm looking forward to her being here, and the Chief's going to join us as well on live stream. We're coming back in a moment. A big announcement about next week. I want you to tune in for that. Hold on. We are taking the next week off, moving aside for NBC's live coverage of the final round of the Open, otherwise known to old folks like me as the British Open. It's from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. from the Royal Troon Golf Club in Scotland. Hope you enjoy it. I'll see you back here on Sunday, July 24th. Thank you to my guests for joining me. You have a great Sunday. We'll see you back here on the 24th.